Hey everyone, welcome again to the latest installment of The Way It Is. I'm your host, Luca with Team Luca First at RE/MAX Service First Realty here in Kingston, Ontario. And I am exceptionally delighted to have with me our guest, Tim Hudak. For those of you that may not know Tim, well, currently he's the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association. For those of you that may remember, Tim was a member of provincial parliament for quite a long time, from 1995 to 2016, and actually was the leader of the opposition for the Conservative Party in Ontario from 2009 to 2014. But now he's busy representing us as agents in the province of Ontario and doing, I will say this, and certainly not pandering, you're doing a great job at it. So kudos to you for that. Yeah, and actually, I also have a note here that my staff prepared for me. You're the chair of the Provincial Tourism Task Force for Post-COVID Recovery, which is interesting. We'll maybe touch on that towards the end of the conversation. Well, I wanted to have you on, and thank you for taking the time. I know your schedule is busy, and we reconnected at the Ontario Real Estate Leadership Conference there a couple of weeks ago, and obviously Ontario having gone through what they've gone through. The pandemic, realtors, the election that happened. But the biggest thing that's coming to light that the general public may not know about is April 1st, 2023 is the final, completion and institution or initiation of TRESA. I'm glad I didn't pick that acronym, but it's the Trust in Real Estate Services Act. I guess let's start, and this is, it's obviously a lengthy document, a piece of legislation designed to help better protect the consumer, I think help make the profession of real estate in Ontario that much better as well, and the registrants that participate in it. Let's go back to the beginning. What was the main impetus for this act, Tim?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Well, Luca, first, thanks for having me on. Great to see you again, too. And thanks for very kind words in the introduction. It's very nice of you to say. And I love the name, The Way It Is. You just get right to the point. No messing around. It's The Way It Is. So
that's right.
I'll follow that theme and give it to you the way it is.
Absolutely.
Well, here's a story for you to connect the dots. Where's TRESA come from? Well, back in 2002, the Real Estate Business Brokers Act was passed into law. And fun fact for you, I was actually the cabinet minister who did that. I was the consumer minister in 2002. I know, Luca, you're looking at me and saying, man, you must have been really young in 2002. That's, 21 years ago. Nice to say.
Well, I started real estate when I was 16. I don't know if you know that or
not. So that act at the time was seen as groundbreaking. It was leading in North America, and a lot of other provinces followed it. But, 21 years have passed since then. And here's an example how out of date it was. It actually had fines that were set in 2002 levels, when the average price of a home in the GTA was probably, $140,000, $150,000. Right. And so the fines are way out of whack for, the nature of the offenses and how much housing costs today. So when I was hired at the Ontario Real Estate Association as CEO, as you mentioned, in 2016, at the end of that year, one of the main goals they gave me was to modernize that legislation, to bring it up to date, to give RICO greater disciplinary powers to go after bad actors, to bring in personal real estate corporations that have been a long fight for realtors, and to make sure that, we raise the bar, again, to be North American leaders in consumer protection and being very demanding of the profession as well. So that's a long answer for you, but that's where it came from. It's sort of full circle for me. I like to joke that they hired me at OREA to fix Hudak's mistakes from 2002.
Well, it's you know what? Everybody wants a second chance, so it's a good that you're doing well on your promise then. So, well, and you know what? And getting back to it, you touched on something. I didn't have it in my notes, but a very important thing, and I was very appreciative of it, and because I'm benefiting from it now. Is this finally realtors being able to incorporate so professional real estate corporations, which I incorporated when you were able to do so back in the fall of 2020. in October. And I was so, throughout my career, and it's sadly, I sound like a broken record always to those that listen, but 35 years in, and I was always so frustrated that solicitors could incorporate, dentists, doctors, insurance people, every professional industry except for real estate. And it was frustrating. So I applaud that initiative 100% because it's benefited. I know it's benefited me greatly. That's for sure. And
I'll talk about that for a quick sec. So and we catch up to today, but the legislation, TRESA, was passed in 2020. Actually, just when we were having a reality conference in Niagara Falls, and it won unanimous support. So every vote in the House, no matter what party, voted for it. That's great news, right? Good GR work, and it was long needed legislation. And it's really broken, Luke, into three phases. We're in phase 2 now. So phase 1 has already been done. So that brought in personal real estate corporations. You're absolutely right. It was demonstrably unfair that realtors here in Ontario could not have this tool for tax planning that others did, and it helps reinvest in your business. So I'm happy to say that got done. And now you have 9,999 of your colleagues, or over 10,000 personal real estate corporations in the province. And when you see the up and down the market we've gone through the last year, you can appreciate, why this is important. And for those, watching the podcast here, they should talk to their lawyer. It's not for everybody, but it does give a good tool, and it's right up there, the gold standard, right next to the doctors, in the ability to, income split with your family. You can have other businesses in there, so it's a good tool. The other part of that, phase 1, was bringing in terms that the average person in the public uses for a realtor. So in the past, you can only use salesperson. I like to say a salesperson sold me the suit. A realtor sold me my house. It's a different job altogether. So now you can use the term realtor, real estate agent, those who have passed in law in your advertisements to you, or your business card, website, what have you. A tool that reflects how average people think about us is much more than simply being a salesperson.
Yes, which is good because, through the course of real estate history, the perception and of realtors was never high, at least the public perception, right? I mean, I think at one time we were, and this isn't to slag car people, but we were just above used car salesmen is sort of how the opinion went, which, I guess had some derogatory connotations on its own. So certainly anything that can help impress upon the public the profession that we're in, and that it is a profession. Exactly. So, and
don't feel bad. I used to be a politician and a border inspector one time in my life too. So those rank, I think, below the car salesman side. Yeah. So those are helpful tools. And now we're in phase 2, as you mentioned. Luca comes in effect on April 1st. I'm glad to talk in more detail about these, but basically it's going to give a greater disciplinary powers to RICO to go after bad actors. It is going to modernize our code of ethics. There's going to be a new open offer system as well that will take place in this area. So there's lots happening as of April 1st, and OREA will be out there leading the way in helping agents understand how this legislation has been improved and modernized.
And that's certainly the one I have highlighted to, if we can flesh that out a bit more, this open offer component that's in the legislation, and for those that are listening and the general public at large, because this became obviously a hot topic button during the pandemic with the crazy prices and the bidding wars that were happening. And so this, though, is at the seller's discretion or the seller's choice, correct? Whether they want to participate in this process or not.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where it starts. Luca, it starts with the homeowner. I mean, they own the home. It's their biggest investment, so they should decide what path they go along. We brought this forward to the government back in, I think, about 2017 or 2018, well before it was headline news around open bidding versus, some politicians have promised to eliminate the traditional offer process. So luckily, we had done our homework, and we said, look, it's a home that somebody owns. They're going to depend on that for dignity in retirement or move up to a larger home with the kids coming along. They should be in the driver's seat. They can do the traditional offer process with the realtor, which we encourage them, or this gives a realtor another tool if they want to do an open offer. So the seller would decide what path to go down to with the advice of their realtor. And if they do the open offer, then there would be agreement from the anybody making an offer that their information would also be on the table. So you have to opt in both directions. And working with your realtor, you can determine, are you sharing, more than just the price? You're going to share closing date. You're going to share any kind of conditions on the property. That will be the process that the realtor will work out with their seller.
Right. Well, and a previous podcast some time ago, his name's not coming to mind, top of mind right now, but it was the principle of that open platform that started in Australia, that the Canadian Real Estate Association is actually going to start having some pilot project or pilot boards, I guess, or sort of taking part in that. I don't know if that's actually started yet or not. Do you know? Are you aware?
I don't think yet. They're waiting for this legislation to come into effect, at least in Ontario. You're absolutely right, though. Open, which comes from Australia. This is a common practice in Australia and New Zealand. I do believe, though, Luke, it's a first in North America and for sure in Canada. And what I like about it is instead of forcing a one-size-fits-all solution, it gives the choice to the seller and buyers in consultation with their well-trained professional realtor on what's going to make the most sense for their family's future.
Right. Now, there was some comments about this open bidding that it's not going to do maybe what the intention was for it in terms of stopping this housing crisis, quote unquote, because of this sort of escalating prices and everything like that. It's certainly not going to make houses more affordable. Can you offer any comments on that, or you've had some pushback on that, or?
Yeah, they're really separate issues. I know sometimes people that think through this on a simplistic level might equate the two, but look, they're really two separate issues. This is about choice for buyers and sellers and more transparency in the offer process, because say there are four people making offers on a home, they'd see what the others have offered. So it gives some faith and transparency. But when it comes to housing prices, this is a supply issue. We have not built enough homes these last 20 years. We built more homes in the 1970s, for goodness sakes, than we did in the last 20 years, right? That's crazy. So you've got more people circling fewer and fewer homes. That's what's driving up prices, not the offer process. And if we want to solve that issue, well, there's good ideas on the table right now of how to build 1.5 million new homes in the next 10 years to play catch up and make sure we have that next generation of Canadian homeowners.
Well, and I'm, I'm going to get on my political soapbox for a minute, just because I get frustrated. I like to rant every now and again, but that's what was bothering me so much with this latest Bank of Canada interest rate hikes, because they've actually created all these now further unintended consequences, which is even more gap between the haves and the have-nots, more housing or sort of less supply. There's still demand. They've increased in Ontario. Well, in Kingston, I think we're number 2 to Peterborough is our vacancy rate, which is like 1.2%, second lowest in the province, and our rental rates are going through the roof. That's all that's all a direct function and directly correlated to the interest rate hikes. So they actually thought, and they still haven't solved the food crisis or the food inflation problem and the energy. Anyway, that's my little rant, because you're right. There's so much more to the housing crisis. And then I'll segue right into this question, which is, it's sort of the big 50,000 foot, view. What is the biggest factor affecting realtors in Ontario right now, in your personal opinion?
There are two. Number one is lack of supply, lack of inventory, and we can talk about it more. You walk through the impact of interest rates going up as like a bulldozer, right? That's a policy instrument that can have severe consequences. The goal is to fix inflation, which is worse. Neither good options, but we will come out of it, and I am confident that there's so much underlying demand for housing that once interest rates stabilize, I think we will see a resurgence in demand and activity. So the affordability crisis would be number one on my list. And Luca, you said it very well. A lot of media commentators or politicians will say, oh, prices are coming down, issue solved. Quite the opposite. The affordability crisis is deeper. There's fewer homes on the market. And with mortgage costs and carrying costs, it's more expensive. Absolutely. So number one issue, I think, for realtors is an affordability crisis. Nothing makes a realtor happier than handing over the keys to a first-time buyer of that home. That's a big focus for us at OREA, and I know in the minds of members out there.
Great. I'm going to circle back to RECO and the acronym Real Estate Council of Ontario. This is the consumer watchdog for realtors in the province. I can't even remember when it came into being. It's been around for a long time now, though. I want to say at least 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. But does it have I mean, with these new changes, with this new act, obviously it's important to weed out the bad actors, to penalize them, to remove them from the system if we can. But does RICO have I mean, we're in a world where it's tough to fill jobs and find quality people to do quality jobs. Does it have the teeth? It may have the teeth. Does it have the infrastructure to fulfill these new policy things?
Yeah, well, it's getting a lot more tools that are going to be important, and hopefully, more staff coming on board to tackle the problem. So let me explain a bit there. I mentioned the number one issue I think on the minds of realtors is the affordability crisis, making sure we can create that next group of Canadian homeowners. And number two, Luke, I'd say is professionalism, making sure that realtor at your side or you work across the table in a transaction with is the highest trained professional in North America. And sadly, we've seen stories where realtors have taken advantage of consumers, which is a disservice to the hardworking realtors like yourself, Luca. Nothing makes a realtor angrier when they see somebody ripping somebody off. So at OREA, we went to the government, we said, we got to give RICO more tools, more teeth, as you said. So number one, a greater ability to suspend or revoke altogether licenses and deny them at the beginning. That's very important to do, to get anybody who breaks the trust of a buyer or seller out of the profession altogether. We've raised the bar when it comes to fines to modern prices as opposed to 2002 home prices. Also, there's going to be more decisions by the RICO Discipline Committee itself, which is important because I believe that leading respected realtors sitting on the Discipline Committee are going to be a lot harder on people who break the rules than my mom would be. An average citizen, right? Right now, it's in the hands too often of a licensing appeal tribunal. They're non-realtors. I think realtors will be tougher. And my fourth point on this, and I can go longer, but I'll stop at my fourth point. It also gives RICO the ability to get more data, to actually study and analyze where the problems are in the system and put more resources there. Quick story for you, the Alcohol and Gaming Commission did this. And they used to inspect everybody equally all the time. And they said, is that the best way, or should we target our resources where the problems are? They did the data analysis and found out what types of bars, what hours, and the infractions. And if you got a clean record, a mom and pop shop that closes at 6, maybe they inspect every 2 or 3 years. But if you're a bad actor, they inspect you until you either clean up your act or they lock you down altogether.
Right.
That's important for RICO to be able to do.
Yeah, no, I'm one of those realtors that get frustrated when you hear the stories, and I wish everyone well in this industry. I really do, but with the pandemic, I mean, across the board, we saw an uptick in the number of registrants that joined the real estate profession. I dare say for potentially all the wrong reasons, because obviously they heard the stories of how much money some of their colleagues or friends or relatives were making, who knows why. What about an education piece? I mean, I know we have our every 2 years we have our updating courses that we take. And is there anything that you on the horizon or anything in your mind that you see that needs to be buoyed on that front?
Yeah, the philosophy that we've taken at OREA is that it's too easy to get in and too hard to kick somebody out when they break the rules. So we fought for it and achieved with the government and with RICO, greater ability to get those bad actors out of the system, as I just walked through. But to get in, we're over 95,000 members today. I think you're right. People, watch HGTV and they say, hey, I can sell a house in 1 hour.
That's right. Yeah.
We wish everybody that's a member success. But we do believe it has to be more demanding. And, because real estate is increasingly complex, it's more and more legalistic and higher value. So we should raise the bar there. You mentioned the continuing education. Too often it is beneath, I think, the profession when all you have to do is click, every few minutes, click. There's no test. There's no did pass fail. We actually believe that there should be much harder there in renewal. And if you fail, then you take a course, whatever, right? You're not out right away like that. But just simply, clicking and watching the hockey game in the background, that ain't right for the profession.
No, I 100% agree. So I'm encouraged to hear that. That's for sure. Well, look, we're already. I know you're on a tight schedule, and we're already gone through. There's an article that came across that I came across, and I know you commented on behalf of OREA, CMHC, about helping with funding for what was it? Some kind of
Generation Squeeze.
report. Sorry?
Generation Squeeze?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or no, or was it about it was CMHC funding a report on the tax for equity in people's homes. Sorry. Yes. Is that the same thing? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, it's the same thing. That was outrageous. CMHC has an incredibly important job and a proud history, right? They were created to help soldiers returning from World War II to get into housing. Their goal is to keep good data and make sure housing affordability stays within reach, as well as rentals. It's an important mission. But Luca, how they got sidetracked in giving public dollars to this group called Generation Squeeze that, quite frankly, is anti-home ownership, that want to make it more expensive to own a home and discourage people from owning homes. Like, this is outrageous. This is putting a dagger in the heart of the Canadian dream. And then CMHC money to do this, and then call for a new equity tax on your home's value. Holy crow, right? That's a betrayal of the greatest source of savings for middle-class Canadians. It will mean less inventory because people aren't going to sell their homes, or they're going to get a whopping tax on top of it. It was a crazy idea, and we came down hard in CMHC and said, stick to your knitting. You've got an important job to do. Stay out of that radical politics.
Yeah, no, and when I saw that article, there was a local councillor here who remained nameless. I just heard this on the news clip. I'm an Ontario morning junkie, and they had them on, and they want to at the council meeting they wanted to implement a tax on houses that were sitting empty, like no different than they had done in BC. And I'm going like, man, when are your rights as a homeowner? You own your home. Isn't that give you the authority to do whatever you like with it, whether it's paint it blue or polka dots, or barring obviously zoning and bylaws and things like that. I get that, but if you want to live in it one day a year or no, I don't know. I find stuff like that. It flies in the face of our what we're here in this democracy for, right?
Absolutely. And our homes are already taxed a lot. They're taxed when they're built. You pay a land transfer tax to the province, or in Toronto, a double land transfer tax when you buy a home. And then at the end of the day, what other product do you have, Luca? You look around your house, your business, where you pay taxes annually on it, right? Our property tax. Yeah. Homes are taxed enough as it is. In this notion of imposing a new tax, whatever the nature. I really wish our public leaders would instead focus on how we address housing supply. How can we speed up the number of homes being built? How can we cut the red tape that can delay a project 7 to 10 years when it comes to a subdivision? In York region, I think it's $122,000 in taxes and fees before you put your first shovel in the ground, for goodness sakes. Mm-hmm. To the credit, I think Premier Ford and the government in Ontario have done a very good job of going in the right direction in terms of looking at housing supply. We had more homes built in 2021 than we had in, I think, 20 years previous. And I'm sorry what was happening with Mayor Tory, because he has some very good plans for Toronto. We need more of that focused on the real problem, getting homes built people can afford.
Yeah. No, and you know what? I think we'll leave it there, because that's a great point to leave it on. Because I was going to ask how the government has been, because obviously, we have a political action committee at the local level, and obviously OREA has one at the provincial level. I'm assuming you have some relationship with the premier in past lives, obviously, in your past life and everything. So have you found that, your counterparts in the government are listening and paying attention?
Yeah, it's been very, very good. There's been 4 different pieces of legislation that the Ford government has passed on the housing supply side, plus TRESA. The most recent one was probably the most pro-home ownership and pro-rental legislation that we've seen in our lifetimes. So hats off to them. They had me sit on their housing affordability task force that came up with a number of ideas that they're now implementing. So we're pleased with that. We're fortunate. I joke a bit that politics is a bit like pro wrestling. You can, yell into the camera at each other and stuff like that, and then go have a beer afterward. It's been nice after I left politics, whether it's the Liberals, New Democrats, Conservatives, or Green Party, have all been very open and receptive to our ideas. And in the last election, they all had some OREA pro home ownership ideas in their election platforms.
Yeah. That's awesome. Tim, listen, I'm going to leave you though, because I know you got to get on the road and go to your next meeting. So I want to thank you again for taking the time. It was a real pleasure. And I'm sure I'll see you again at the next conference, whenever that is or whatnot. So,
well, my pleasure, Luca. Great to see you again. Thanks for having me on. And hopefully I told it the way it is.
You certainly did. I appreciate that. All right. Thanks. Have a great day, Tim.